So I'm going to make up a little reference board. I have my character's reference board. I'm going to make an orthographic sheet. This is a character. This is the image that's going to be my key image, but looking through some of the other illustrations, this is the one that's in the most neutral pose, so it's going to be the easiest for me to build my orthographic reference off of. Now, the thing about the reference, what you're looking for is it doesn't have to have all these details. What you're looking to do is create something that's going to give you the ability to line things up where they need to go. So I'm going to make, I'm using Affinity Photo. You can use Photoshop, whatever. This doesn't really matter about the tool. It's more about the approach. So you can use Krita, Clip Studio, Paint, whatever you want. Like I said, it's not really about the tool you use, it's about the approach, but most tools will have these features. So if you're in something, say, like Photoshop, you probably have the ability to drag down reference layers like that, little reference lines. And if not, and you're just in a regular painting program, it's usually there's some ability to draw like a straight line, like a Procreate can do that if you hold and press it down. So what I'm going to start doing is figuring out how many heads tall I think this character is. So I'm going to drag down a couple reference lines, either by drawing them or using these little guys. And down for the feet, you have a question of like, do the feet end here? Do the feet end here? Like to do something in the middle because we're trying to figure out basically where the character center is. So we're imagining somewhere between the 2 feet is what we're going to say is the head proportion. And from there, let's drag in just one more. And this is going to be our head height. So the question is, how many of these tall is our character? And that's what's really important at first. So I'm going to pick a nice little color here. So maybe something a little less bland than this. Little colors, something like that. Give it a nice light blue, I think I can work with. Gives it a nice sketchy feel. And so I'm going to draw just like a general head. And I could also use something like a head tool or something like that. Or I could even just take the head itself and duplicate it and place it down, which is also an option. And I'm going to drag and duplicate this to make myself some heads. And it's not necessarily about precision. This is just a guide. So I'm going to say, we're going to call this about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads tall. So this seems pretty close. So we're going to say that she is, I'm making a little note, 6 heads tall. So this is going to be part of my sketch. This also lets me know at levels like the groin is about at 3 heads, and this hip waist is kind of like right, we can see right in here, like this lines up there. We can see the shoulders are about 1/3 of a head down. So you start to get those little reference images. Let's start thinking now about a side view. If I have this from the front, then what does my side look like? Well, let's just kind of roughly sketch it out. I know it should also be relatively spherical, and then I should be able to get stuff like where my hip comes in. So let's drop in a line for the bottom of my waist, and maybe even something like I could do like where my knees are. So right about here. And now when I come into my little sketch tool, I can be looking for reference of like where stuff goes. So this should be the bottom of my groin, which means my character's body should be here. The arm lines up. It's not quite this because we can see the character's shoulder goes up. So the arm should probably be a little closer here because I can see that's where the clavicle is. So my arm maybe opens here, which means my neck would come from here. This is pretty good. This is about where that like line at the top of the rib cage is going to be. So that's where I know that's going to be. The belt and waistcoat is all right in here. And I won't be perfect with it, but it's going to give me some idea. Like down here is where the jacket, little waist kind of coat should end. And then let's see, I got a leg. Just drawing like rough shapes here. Something like so. And then I can finish out something for the character. I want to do this quick and dirty so you can see I'm not, I want to get the same relative. If it's this thick, it should probably be this thick back here. But what I want you to see is I'm not really trying to get this specific. I'm mostly just trying to get things to line up. This is what I'm most concerned with. Let's keep this pretty narrow, get that like narrow ankle kind of thing that the character's got going. Okay, and then, maybe I want to put in a little something for the hair, but it's really not important because I'm going to use other references to get the head sculpting in. But I want some idea of where some of these main features are. Notice I didn't draw the arm because the arm would cover up a lot of what I've got going here. And if I look at this, the arm kind of goes from here to here, and then I need to double that length, so maybe about here, to get the rest of the arm, because I know the elbow should be about halfway through, which if I imagine like this swinging down, it means the arm comes to about this spot. And so now I can say my arm is about from here, say to here, and I think right halfway through should be about where my elbow is. Seems like it more or less lines up with my character's elbow. And so we have the upper, and then it sort of blouses out. And I got a big sleeve. And then the hand comes after it. So I can say, maybe we have like a big blousey sleeve like that. So this becomes something I can use. And now I can also do a front view if I want to get like it perfectly on and think about like where the arms should be and where the neck should line up. But this is entirely up to you how much of this you feel you need to do. I'm just kind of like, as I go, I'm drawing a couple lines across to get an idea of like, okay, this is like the middle of the belt, which means the sash is right here, which means I'm kind of getting this, means the collar comes up here. And it's okay to, you know, do a couple versions of this or practice it a couple times. Just looking at this as my reference. I'm trying to get my best job. Now, sometimes when you're doing an arm, you can do like what's called an A pose. So T pose you might see before, which is like the character, and you'll see like I'd have like the sleeve and the big poofy thing and then the hand out. But also when we're modeling characters, we more often than not want something called an A pose because it's more natural. It's more relaxed for the character and their arms. So I'm more thinking about my hands in say this position, which is going to feel a little bit more natural. Again, how much you want to put into this is all up to you. I want to show you that really what we care about is that when we're putting this together, we can maybe get some idea of a number of heads tall reference and a number of heads wide, so that when we're starting to model this character, we have some reference points to go off of. So when we're building the proportions of our character, we can make a decent estimate. So like this is my whole hip and everything in here. And we're going to have like a leg shooting straight off. Keep things nice and simple. Sometimes too, I've seen people who just like, they'll just Photoshop up the whole character model just to give it the idea. But this kind of gives me an opportunity to check my own knowledge of the character proportions well before I'm doing anything in it. Kind of got a big wide head, relatively thin neck, and then this line on the shirt is coming to about there. That's where the collar and everything goes. Great. So when you have that, I'm going to save it and add it to my board. In this case, it's just right here. So I'm just going to use my clipping and toss it on my board so I can reference this. I will also be saving this though, because I'm going to use this in the next section in Blender to actually help me block out and start my model. And I'll show you how to do that.